Well, good morning. It's been quite a uneventful evening. There was a lot to digest, content and topics and stuff. There are two topics that I would like to talk about, but I'm going to have to break them up into different parts. The first one has to do with the journey of identity, which I will cover later. And the second topic is about men and why they are needed within the church and, outside of it, so to speak. Basically why men are important outside of a biological level, outside of, families and carrying on your legacy, that sort of thing. That one hit me kind of hard because I was listening to some other content and some of the ideas that were presented there were there was time taken to explain them and to go in depth into them, and I will link a few videos down below. But the idea, and this was one of these the YouTubers is specifically dealing with the black community. So there are definitely different issues for those who are in the black community than those who are not. And a lack of fathers are generally a very big one. I would have to say, though, when it comes down to it, men are generally the ones who set down the boundaries, they set down the rules, and they're the ones who give out punishment wherever the rules are broken. And they're basically the lawmakers, if you want to go up a little bit there. If you want to compare it to, government and all that. And it's important to note that the skill set for men lends the ability to put out rules is something that men do more efficiently than women, and it's the way men are as far as with categorizing and being able to put something down and then enforcing it. I mean, what's the point of putting down rules if you're not going to enforce them, or if you can't enforce them, right? I mean, kind of pointless. But going beyond that, being able to mentor and to speak out, as well, to be in a leadership position, as well as the one inside of a patriarch, inside of a home, so to speak, a family, being the head of your legacy, so to speak, where you're talking to your kids and your grandkids, if you want to have that in mind, the dynamic changes. So being able to be the head of a family means more than just simply putting down rules. For some people, they like spoiling their grandkids too, and they don't really do much with the rules because their kids are handling it. So there's definitely some things to look forward to as far as that goes. I would, however, wanted to point out that as far as leadership, that is lacking. Mentors, lacking. In fact, many people don't actually hear that word very often, so it's unknown. It's a dying word. That's happening because men are getting older and they're retiring, they're focusing on their family, they're focusing on their career, their life, and as one of, I believe his name is Kevin Samuels, as he's pointing out within the church is focusing more on couples and families rather than those who are singles, and there's a large majority of men, young men, who are single, and since they are not being focused on, they're just simply moving on. They're just, whatever. They're moving on. And there's definitely, the highlight of that video was basically how does the church bring men back. And I will link that down below, as well as some other ones. These are all very good videos to think about, not just simply to try to learn, but to think and to see how this applies in your own life. But the point still remains. Being a man, you are most likely going to be outside of a lot. the church, in a sense, your family, because you'll be moving on. To tie this up with how things are today, there is a distinct change in how dating and marriage is happening. And so there is a larger, and as the years go on, there's a larger and larger period where men are being single. And this is not ever talked about. And finding your place in society will take years. For some people like myself, it has taken an entire decade. I know more than what I did a decade ago. That was because I was not actually looking a decade ago. I was focusing on college, on trying to make a career. Leaving the Army is one of the hardest decisions that I've had to make in my entire life. I never wanted to, but now that I have, I can honestly see that I am a bit better for it in other ways. And I'm definitely more the man that I need to be than the man that I want to be, or how I saw myself be in my own father. That leads to the next point. How you view your father is the kind of role model that you will aspire to be, or that is up there that you are looking at. You know, like you view men through the lens of how you focus on your father. In some cases, many cases, from what I understand, people look at God. They look at God as a father figure, and they do comparisons there. Like, well, I had a shit father. I had a bad father, and I believe God is the same way. Yeah, that's never really easy to talk about. You have to be able to look and question and to see what is out there. You don't just simply rely on your emotions and feelings, because they change. There needs to be a foundation for that as well, but it's very different. It really is. Yeah, but anyway, back to the point there. Having a role model when it comes down to men really will help you set you up for success and to help overcome the problems in your life. Now, for women, this is going to be very different, because it's not really a role model, so to speak. It's more like, dare I say, the type of man you would want to marry or want to avoid. Beyond that, I can't speak, because I'm not a woman. I don't know anything about that. And I'm very lacking when it comes down to being able to hold conversations with women. That is not by failure on any of my part. I've spent a lot of time trying to talk, and being avoided by women, or being rejected, turned down, and just simply not having a conversation there, as I've learned. And this does tie in with the topic of men, and I'm hitting these points, but it's going to take a few minutes to get to that. Being able to address those in your life and those around you will take time, and it is the mark of a man, just like being able to be very rigid in what you believe, and what you talk about, and your values, because men have values that they stand by and that they protect. How can you say you are a man if you let people walk all over you? You are a different type of man if that is the case. That is not necessarily right or wrong, but I would have to say there's a difference between being a male and being a man. That gets a little bit more complicated there, because then people have different interpretations of, what men are. But regardless of all that, there are certain characteristics that everyone can agree upon. Men have standards. Men are a certain way. Even if some of these are off by a few points, they're generally still the same. So how does this matter? The fact that leadership, the fact that fathers, the fact that those who can help raise the next generation are disappearing. And so there's been a lot of substitute in people's lives, and in my life as well. Realizing that there will come a there will come a time in your life when you have to stop relying on your father. It kind of hits you kind of hard, especially if you're in my shoes and you've had to rely on your parents for years. That's not really a bad thing, but it can kind of hold you back a little bit, because there are some people who have learning disabilities and it just takes a little bit longer to learn. And learning social cues, learning boundaries is much more complicated, because they're not something that you can actually, how do I put it now? It's not something you can see. It's not really something that is in writing and that is translated very well. So for some people like myself, it is harder to understand. And on top of that, there are other people who have trouble understanding this because they have such bad role models. Understanding, seeing who is out there who is a good father figure, who is a good role model to learn from, to try to observe, and to see what you can have in your own life that they have, that you like and respect and value. Because let's face it, if you don't value someone, there's nothing from their life that you're going to take to apply to yours, except this is what you should avoid. Do not do this. And this is a red flag. All in all, though, when it comes down to it, and this is the last point that I want to hit up, real men do not lie. They stand by their word, and if there is any deviation, anything, they will point that out and saying, like, for the most part, this is what is different. Real men do not lie. They stand by their word. It's who they are. And even if you don't like them, you can at least understand where they're coming from and respect them for what they are saying, and hopefully for the impact that they made in your life. Alright, hopefully this was helpful to you, and I hope you've learned a few things. Until next time.